The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled like a sea of stars, its crystal walls reflecting the light of 1,000 different suns from 1,000 different worlds. But today, those walls echoed with something less pleasant. Laughter. Cruel, mocking laughter. Dr. Jack Thompson stood at the center of the hall, his worn Earth uniform looking shabby compared to the shimmering robes of the alien representatives. His research papers, containing 15 years of work on dimensional physics, floated in the holographic display above his head. The human scientist kept his face calm, though his hands trembled slightly at his sides. "And you truly believe," Master Architect Rel said, his tall, silvery form towering over Jack, "that your species has discovered something about dimensional travel that we missed in our 50,000 years of space exploration?" The alien's fourth arm gestured dismissively at the equations floating above them. More laughter rippled through the hall. The council members, representing 300 of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, seemed to find great entertainment in this human's presentation. "Our research shows clear evidence," Jack said, keeping his voice steady, "that dimensions beyond the fifth are accessible through what we call natural quantum folding. We've observed these patterns in..." "Patterns," interrupted Rel, his crystalline eyes flashing with amusement. "You base your dimensional physics on patterns found in your primitive Earth structures. What next? Should we consult your ancient cave paintings for faster-than-light travel theories?" The council chamber erupted in another wave of laughter. Jack noticed some representatives were recording the session, probably to share this entertainment with their homeworlds. Admiral Mary West, standing at the back of the human delegation, stepped forward. Her decorated uniform caught the light, and her presence commanded attention even among the alien dignitaries. "Members of the council," she said, her voice cutting through the mockery, "Earth respectfully requests you consider our application for membership based on the merit of our research, not your preconceptions about our species." A tall, green-skinned counselor leaned forward in his floating chair. "Your species barely mastered four-dimensional calculations a century ago. Our youngest civilizations have been folding fifth-dimensional space for millennia. How dare you claim to understand anything beyond that?" Jack tried one more time. "But that's exactly our point. Our primitive perspective might offer insights that..." "Enough," Rel's voice boomed through the chamber. "The council has heard sufficient evidence." He turned to address the gathered representatives. "Shall we vote on Earth's application for membership?" The vote was quick and unanimous. Red lights flashed across the chamber's walls, each one a rejection. "The council's decision is final," Rel announced, not bothering to hide his smirk. "Earth's application for membership is denied. You may reapply in 50 standard years, assuming your species has evolved beyond its current limitations." He waved two of his hands in a dismissive gesture. "We suggest you focus on mastering basic fifth-dimensional physics first. Leave the advanced research to civilizations capable of understanding it." As the human delegation gathered their materials, Jack heard snippets of conversation from the alien representatives. "Did you see their equations? They still use linear mathematics. I heard they only discovered quantum entanglement 2 centuries ago. How did they even manage to reach our galaxy with such primitive understanding?" Admiral West placed a firm hand on Jack's shoulder as they walked toward the exit. "Don't let them get to you," she whispered. "They don't know what we know." Jack nodded slightly, his mind already racing with calculations. The council's mockery had shown him something important, something they had missed in their arrogance. Their understanding of dimensional physics was advanced, yes, but it was also rigid, bound by traditions and assumptions thousands of years old. As the Earth delegation boarded their ship, Jack pulled out his personal tablet and began writing frantically. The council's dismissal of Earth's primitive understanding had given him an idea. Sometimes, he realized, you had to step backward to leap forward. And humanity was about to make one hell of a leap. The council's laughter still echoed in his ears, but Jack smiled. Let them laugh. They didn't know it yet, but their mockery had just helped humanity discover exactly what they'd been missing in their dimensional calculations. Soon, very soon, no one would be laughing at Earth anymore. 3 months after the humiliation at the Galactic Council, Dr. Jack Thompson stood in a vast underground chamber beneath Europa's icy surface. The space hummed with energy, filled with equipment that would make those arrogant council members choke on their laughter. This was Project Ascendant, humanity's best-kept secret. Status report. Admiral West's voice echoed through the chamber as she entered, her boots clicking against the metal floor. The cold light of the underground facility made her silver hair shine like steel. Jack gestured to the massive structure taking shape in the center of the chamber. The Transcendence is ahead of schedule. Those patterns we found in the Egyptian pyramids, they weren't just decorative. When we copied them into the ship's crystalline structure, the dimensional readings went off the charts. The object before them didn't look like any normal spaceship. Instead of metal plates and engines, it was built from overlapping crystal panels that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Sometimes it looked like a sphere, other times like a pyramid, and occasionally like something that hurt the eyes to look at. "Show me," Admiral West said, her eyes fixed on the strange vessel. Jack walked to a control panel and pressed several buttons. The crystals began to glow with a soft blue light. "Watch this," he said, pointing to a nearby monitor. "Normal ships can barely touch the 5th dimension. The Council's best ships can only brush against the 6th. He adjusted some controls, and the crystal structure began to pulse. "But we're going straight to the 7th. The Admiral's eyes widened as she watched the readings. "How is this possible?" "We've been looking in the wrong place all along," Jack explained, his excitement making him talk faster. "Every civilization out there tried to brute force their way through dimensions with fancy technology. But Earth's ancient builders, they accidentally found natural dimensional weak points. They built structures that resonated with these points without even knowing it." He pulled up a hologram showing various Earth monuments, the pyramids, Stonehenge, the Easter Island statues, ancient temples from around the world. These weren't just buildings. They were accidentally tapping into dimensional energy. We just had to figure out the pattern they all shared. A young engineer named Robert rushed into the chamber, holding a tablet. "Dr. Thompson, the final crystal layer is ready for testing." Jack nodded and turned to Admiral West. "Want to see something really interesting?" They walked to a sealed observation room overlooking a testing chamber. Inside, a small crystal pyramid, built using the same pattern as the Transcendence, sat on a platform. "Watch carefully," Jack said as he initiated the test sequence. The crystal began to hum, its edges becoming blurry. Suddenly, it seemed to exist in multiple places at once, not like a hologram or illusion, but as if it was genuinely occupying several points in space simultaneously. "That's 7th dimensional folding," Jack explained proudly. "The Council thinks it's impossible because they try to force their way through dimensions one at a time. But we found a way to skip straight to the 7th. It's like, imagine trying to get to the top floor of a building. They're taking the stairs, while we found the elevator." Admiral West stared at the crystal as it continued to shift through space. "Will it work on the full scale?" "It already is." Jack pointed back to the main chamber where the Transcendence pulsed with energy. "The whole ship is built on the same principle. We're not just building a vessel, Admiral. We're building something that breaks all their rules about what's possible." "What about a crew?" she asked. "How can anyone pilot a ship that exists in 7 dimensions?" Jack smiled. "That's the best part. Remember how they mocked our primitive human minds? Turns out our brains are already wired to understand multiple dimensions. We just needed the right interface." He gestured to a row of strange-looking helmets. "The ship doesn't need a pilot. It needs dreamers. People who can think beyond normal space." "How long until it's ready?" 2 weeks for final testing." Jack's expression turned serious. "After that, humanity will be ready to show the galaxy what primitive minds can really do." The Transcendence's crystals pulsed again, sending patterns of light dancing across the chamber walls. Soon, very soon, the laughter would stop. Master Architect Rel no longer felt like laughing. He stood in the Galactic Council's emergency command center, watching as another star system vanished from the giant holographic map. The room was filled with the urgent voices of council representatives, their former arrogance replaced by growing fear. "That's the third system this week," announced the green-skinned counselor, his floating chair now scratched and dented from a recent evacuation. "The entities are moving faster than we predicted." The holographic display showed a spreading darkness, like ink dropping into clear water. Whatever these things were, they came from the sixth dimension, tearing holes in normal space as they moved. The Council's most advanced chips, even those capable of fifth-dimensional travel, were useless against them. "Show me the Proxos system attack again," Rel commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying recordings from the Council's latest defeat. Their ships, beautiful and advanced, fired weapons that simply passed through the dimensional entities. It was like trying to fight shadows with a flashlight. A junior officer rushed into the command center. "Master Architect, we've lost contact with the Meridian colony. 40 million citizens, just gone." Rel's crystalline eyes darkened. Two of his arms gripped the command console, while the others called up defensive statistics. Nothing worked. Their weapons were useless, their shields meaningless. The entities simply existed in a way that made conventional warfare impossible. "We need to broadcast a galaxy-wide alert," the Green Counselor said, his voice shaking. "Every civilization must be warned." "And tell them what?" Rel snapped. "That the most advanced alliance in the galaxy can't protect them. That we're helpless against these things." An aide approached cautiously. "Sir, we've received a transmission from Earth. They say they might be able to help." The room fell silent. Rel turned slowly, his silver face tight with anger. "Earth. The primitives who think they understand dimensional physics because they studied old buildings." He laughed, but this time the sound was hollow. What could they possibly do? The aide pressed a button, and a hologram of Admiral West appeared in the center of the room. "Council members," she said, her voice steady and confident. "We've been monitoring the situation. We have technology that might be effective against these entities." "Impossible," Rel said. "Your species can barely handle fifth-dimensional calculations. These beings exist in the sixth dimension. You can't even perceive them properly, let alone fight them." "Actually," Admiral West replied, "we've developed something that operates in the seventh dimension. We believe we can not only perceive these entities, but potentially communicate with them." More impossible claims, but this time, Rel noticed something different in the room. The other council members weren't laughing. They were listening. "The entities will reach the Centauri sector in 6 days. Admiral West continued. "Let us help, or at least let us try." Before Rel could respond, another alarm blared. The holographic map showed 3 more systems going dark. The entities were getting faster, learning as they moved through normal space. The Green Counselor spoke up. "Master Architect, we cannot afford to ignore any possibility of help, even if it seems unlikely." Rel stared at the map, watching as thousands of years of galactic civilization were being erased, system by system. His pride warred with his duty to protect the galaxy. Finally, all 4 of his arms dropped in resignation. "Very well," he said to Admiral West's hologram. "Show us what you can do. But quickly, we don't have much time." As the transmission ended, Rel heard worried whispers among the council members. Their mighty civilization, with all its advanced technology and ancient wisdom, was about to put its fate in the hands of humans. The same humans they had mocked just months ago. The entities continued their advance through the galaxy, leaving empty space in their wake. But for the first time since the crisis began, something else spread through the council chamber. Hope, even if it came from the most unlikely source. Deep beneath Europa's ice, the Transcendence pulsed with energy as Captain Tom Reed walked through its crystalline corridors. The ship no longer looked strange to him after months of training. Its shifting walls and impossible angles had become almost comfortable, like an old friend who spoke in riddles. "Final system check," he announced into his communicator. Around him, his crew of 20 worked at stations that seemed to float in space, their special neural interfaces allowing them to see and understand the ship's seventh-dimensional controls. Dr. Thompson's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Captain, the entities will reach the Centauri sector in 18 hours. Are you and your crew ready?" Tom looked at his team. They were an unusual bunch: artists, musicians, mathematicians, and dreamers. People who could think in ways that broke normal rules. The Council would have never chosen them as spacecraft crew, but that was exactly why they were perfect for this mission. "Show me the morning test results," Tom requested, approaching the central command area. The space around him shifted, displaying data in patterns that would have given most aliens a headache. But to him and his crew, trained to think beyond normal dimensions, it made perfect sense. Lisa, his navigation officer, pointed to a swirling pattern of light. "The seventh-dimensional fold is stable, Captain. Those ancient patterns Dr. Thompson found in Earth's monuments. They're working better than we hoped. The ship isn't just traveling through higher dimensions. It's dancing with them." In the observation deck above, Admiral West watched the crew work. Dr. Thompson stood beside her, checking final calculations on his tablet. "Will it be enough?" she asked quietly. "It has to be," Jack replied, not looking up from his calculations. "The Council's ships failed because they tried to fight these entities in normal space, but we're not going to fight them. We're going to meet them on their own level. And then some." The Admiral nodded toward the crew below. "And they can handle it. Operating in 7 dimensions isn't like anything we've trained for before." Jack finally looked up, smiling slightly. "That's exactly why they can handle it. The Council thinks humans are primitive because we still dream, still see patterns in chaos, still believe in impossible things. They've forgotten that sometimes the best way to understand something isn't to study it, but to dream about it." In the ship's engine room, engineers made final adjustments to the crystalline core. The structure hummed with power, its geometry following patterns found in everything from Egyptian pyramids to Mayan temples to ancient stone circles. Patterns that the universe itself seemed to recognize. "Captain," one of the engineers called out, "the core is showing some unusual readings." Tom moved to check the display, his neural interface translating impossible mathematics into understandable forms. "It's not unusual. It's excited. The ship knows what's coming. It wants to fly." As the final hours ticked by, the crew ran through their preparations one last time. They checked their special suits, designed to protect them as their minds stretched across dimensions. They reviewed emergency procedures for scenarios no human had ever faced before. They sent final messages to their families, knowing they might be the last. "All stations report ready," Tom announced finally. The ship's crystal walls pulsed in harmony with his words, as if agreeing. Dr. Thompson's voice came through again. "Captain, we're picking up new activity in the Centauri sector. The entities are moving faster than predicted. We need to launch now." Tom looked at his crew, seeing determination in their eyes. These were the people the Council had laughed at, had called primitive and simple. Now they were about to attempt something no species had ever tried, reaching into the 7th dimension to save the galaxy. "Very well," he said, settling into his command station as reality began to bend around them. "Let's show the galaxy what primitive humans can do." The Transcendence's crystals flared with brilliant light as the launch countdown began. In just a few minutes, they would attempt the impossible. And somewhere out there, beyond normal space, something waited for them. The Galactic Council's Emergency Command Center fell silent as the Transcendence emerged from Europa's icy surface. Through their long-range viewers, the Council members got their first look at humanity's secret weapon. Many laughed nervously at first. The ship looked nothing like their sleek, advanced vessels. "That's their great hope," Master Architect Rel said, his voice dripping with doubt. "It looks like a child's crystal toy." The ship hung in space, its crystalline surface catching light from Jupiter. Its form seemed to shift and change as they watched, sometimes looking like a pyramid, sometimes a sphere, sometimes something that hurt their eyes to look at. But their laughter died when their sensors started screaming. "Impossible," one of the technical officers whispered, checking and rechecking readings. "The dimensional energy. It's off our scales." Inside the Transcendence, Captain Tom Reed and his crew prepared for their first seventh-dimensional jump. The ship's crystal corridors hummed with power, reality bending around them in ways that would have driven most beings mad. But to this carefully chosen crew, it felt right, like finally being able to see with eyes that had always been half closed. Entities detected in the Centauri sector, Lisa reported from her navigation station. "They're tearing through the Council's defense fleet like it isn't even there." Tom nodded, his neural interface showing him impossible geometries that somehow made perfect sense. "All stations, prepare for dimensional shift. Remember your training. Don't fight what you're about to see. Dream it, feel it, let your mind expand with it." In the Council chamber, alarms blared as the entities destroyed another star system. The holographic display showed the Council's most advanced ships, worth trillions in resources, being swatted aside like insects. "The human vessel is powering up," an officer reported. "But these readings, they can't be right." The Transcendence's crystal surface began to glow, patterns of light racing across its structure. The same patterns found in Earth's ancient monuments, in the spirals of galaxies, in the very fabric of space itself. The ship wasn't fighting against reality. It was dancing with it. "Now," Captain Reed commanded. The ship shifted, and reality shifted with it. In the Council chamber, beings who had mocked humanity's primitive understanding watched in shock as the Transcendence did something their civilization had declared impossible. It didn't just enter the higher dimensions. It transcended them. The ship existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes, its human crew perceiving and navigating spaces that the Council's best scientists couldn't even theorize about. The ancient patterns built into its structure sang in harmony with the universe's own geometry, creating a vessel that wasn't just traveling through dimensions. It was part of them. "By all the stars," Rel whispered, all four of his arms trembling. "How are they doing this?" On the main display, they watched as the Transcendence approached the dimensional entities. Where the Council's weapons had passed harmlessly through them, the human ship could actually interact with them. It moved through space in ways that made the Council's best vessels look like they were standing still. "Message from the human vessel," an officer announced, their voice shaking with awe. Captain Reed's voice filled the chamber. "Galactic Council, this is the Transcendence. We have made contact with the entities, standing by to demonstrate what primitive human minds can really do." The Council members watched in stunned silence as the ship they had mocked, built by a species they had laughed at, did what 50,000 years of their advanced civilization couldn't do. It reached into the seventh dimension and touched the impossible. The laughter had stopped, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Transcendence hung in seven-dimensional space, face to face with beings that had terrorized the galaxy. To normalize, the entities looked like holes in reality, dark, terrifying tears in the fabric of space. But through the ship's special sensors and their neural interfaces, the human crew saw something very different. "Captain," Lisa called from her station, her voice filled with surprise. They're beautiful." Captain Tom Reed nodded, understanding what she meant. In seventh-dimensional space, the entities weren't monsters or weapons. They were creatures of pure geometry and light, their forms twisting through dimensions in complex dances. And they were scared. "They're lost," Tom realized, watching their movements through his neural interface. "They're not attacking the galaxy. They're panicking." The Council watched through their limited sensors as the Transcendence moved closer to the entities. In their command center, Master Architect Rel gripped his console with all four hands. "What are they doing?" he demanded. They need to attack now, while they have the chance. But aboard the Transcendence, the crew was seeing something the Council couldn't understand. The entities weren't moving like invaders or destroyers. They were moving like animals trapped in a strange place, lashing out in fear and confusion. Dr. Thompson, Tom called through the ship's communication system. I think I know why Earth's ancient monuments had those patterns. They weren't just random designs. They were echoes. In the Europa base, Jack Thompson's eyes widened as he understood. Of course, those weren't just patterns we found. They were fragments of seventh-dimensional language. Our ancestors saw these beings or others like them. They tried to record what they saw. The entities swirled around the Transcendence, their complex geometries telling a story that only this human crew, with their minds open to impossible dimensions, could understand. They were explorers, ancient ones, who had become trapped in the wrong dimensional plane. Each attempt to find their way home only pulled them further into normal space, their confusion and fear causing destruction they didn't even realize they were causing. Lisa, Tom commanded, adjust our crystal resonance. Match their patterns. Let's show them we understand. The ship's crystalline structure began to pulse with new rhythms, mimicking the entity's seventh-dimensional language. The patterns that humans had carved into stone thousands of years ago now danced in light across the ship's surface. In the council chamber, the aliens watched in confusion as the Transcendence seemed to perform an impossible dance in space. Their sensors couldn't understand what was happening, couldn't translate the complex dimensional communications taking place. They're not fighting, one council member observed in shock. They're talking. The entity's movements changed, becoming less chaotic, more harmonious. Through their neural interfaces, the human crew felt waves of emotion from the beings, relief, recognition, hope. They've been trapped here for millions of years, Tom explained to the council through their communication link. Every time they tried to find their way home, they slipped further into our dimensions. All they needed was someone who could understand them, who could show them the way back. The Transcendence's crystals flared with brilliant light as it began to guide the entities, using its unique seventh-dimensional capabilities to show them the path home. The patterns that humanity's ancestors had unknowingly preserved now served as a dimensional map, leading lost travelers back to their proper place in reality. I don't understand. Rel's voice came through the comm. You had the power to destroy them. Why help them instead? Captain Reed smiled as he watched the entities begin their journey home, their grateful songs rippling through dimensional space in patterns of pure mathematical beauty. Because, Master Architect, he replied, sometimes the most advanced solution isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most complex technology. Sometimes it's about being primitive enough to still see wonder in the impossible, and being simple enough to choose understanding over fear. 1 month after the Transcendence guided the dimensional entities home, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different. The crystal walls that had once echoed with mocking laughter now shimmered with respectful silence as Dr. Jack Thompson stood before the assembled representatives again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Captain Tom Reed and his crew stood beside him, along with Admiral West. And this time, nobody was laughing. Master Architect Rel rose from his seat, all 4 arms held in a gesture of respect. The galaxy owes humanity a debt we can never repay, he announced, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. We were wrong about your species. Completely wrong. The holographic displays around the hall showed recordings from the Transcendence's mission, the ship dancing through 7 dimensions, communicating with beings that the Council's finest minds couldn't even properly perceive. The patterns found in humanity's ancient monuments, once mocked as primitive scratchings, now recognized as vital scientific data preserved across millennia. The Council has voted, Rel continued. Earth is not only granted full membership, but is also invited to lead our new Department of Dimensional Sciences. Your perspective has shown us how much we still have to learn. Admiral West stepped forward. We accept with one condition. She paused, making eye contact with various council members. The department won't focus only on technical advancement. We'll study the connection between dimensions and consciousness, between mathematics and intuition. Science isn't just about technology. It's about understanding. In the audience, representatives from hundreds of worlds watched as humans were finally welcomed as equals. Many had already requested permission to send their scientists to Earth to study those ancient monuments they had once dismissed. Some even spoke of building new structures incorporating the patterns humanity had preserved. The Transcendence wasn't just a ship, Jack explained to the assembly. It was proof that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from looking backward to move forward. Your civilization's advanced so far that you forgot some basic truths. You forgot how to dream. From his seat, the green-skinned counselor, who had once dismissed Earth's application, spoke up. But how did your ancestors know? How did they preserve these seventh-dimensional patterns without even understanding what they were? Tom smiled, remembering the beautiful geometric songs of the entities, because they looked up at the stars and weren't afraid to imagine impossible things. They saw patterns in the universe, and instead of trying to force them into existing theories, they simply recorded them, preserved them, waited for the day when we would understand what they meant. The council chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated the implications. Some were already talking about combining their advanced technology with humanity's unique insights. Others wondered what other knowledge might be hidden in the art and architecture of younger civilizations they had previously ignored. The Transcendence will remain our flagship, Admiral West announced, but we're already building more ships using the same principles. And this time, we're inviting scientists from all council worlds to join our crews, because the only way forward is together, combining your advanced technology with our way of seeing the universe. As the session ended, Jack found himself standing next to Rel in one of the chamber's quiet corners. The alien scientist seemed deep in thought. "You know what the funniest thing is?" Rel said finally. "We called you primitive because you still looked for patterns in nature, still believed in things you couldn't prove, still dreamed about impossible possibilities. We thought we were beyond all that. But in the end, those primitive traits were exactly what the galaxy needed." Jack nodded, watching as human and alien scientists excitedly discussed plans for future expeditions. "That's the thing about being primitive," he replied with a smile. "It means you're still growing, still learning, still willing to believe that the impossible might just be possible after all." Outside the council chamber, the Transcendence waited in orbit, its crystalline surface catching starlight. Its patterns, copied from monuments built by long-dead humans who dared to record what they couldn't understand, now pointed the way to humanity's future among the stars. The laughter had stopped, and in its place came something better: wonder.